do want to get to the topic of the week, which is the difference between wills and trusts. And I want to break this down and make it really simple for you. And by the way, this week I posted on my Facebook page asking for what you guys want to hear about on these weekly Fairy Godlawyer updates. Because as fun as it is to get on here and listen to myself talk, it's really not the point of it. The point of it is to offer a service to you all and to give you in really manageable, easy to understand little sound bites, information that's actually useful for you, that can help you in running your life and your business. So I asked this week, and I'm glad I did, because the topic that I was going to talk about, which was PPP loan forgiveness, did not seem to be a topic that anybody cared about. So two topics were of interest, and one is the difference between wills and trusts, which I'm going to talk about right now. And then the other one was, hey, Ilana, I started my LLC on LegalZoom. I'm good to go, right? And I'm going to save that topic for next week, because I want to put a little bit more time into preparing, because I have a lot to say on that. So today, to start off your holiday weekend, the difference between wills and trusts. And I'm going to make this really simple and straightforward. So a will and a trust, they serve similar purposes, but they're very, very different documents. A will is very inflexible, and it only comes into existence upon your death. And in fact, it's not even technically valid until a judge says that it's valid. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if you only have a will and you have assets when you die that you want to go to the people you love, like your children or your family members, well, if you only have a will, then they're going to have to go through a court process called probate. And last time I tried to do this Facebook Live where there was no volume, at this point, I switched over to a share screen, but I think having that was part of the problem with the volume. So I'm not going to do that this time. But I am just going to tell you that probate in California is a long, arduous, public, expensive process that most people who are in the know decide to opt their families out of. So it takes about 12 to 18 months. That's just as fast as it can go. And when it's all said and done, it may cost your family up to 5% of the total gross value of everything you own. Now, you can imagine that that can get pretty expensive pretty fast. It also requires somebody to go to court and start a court process, and on a practical level, be dealing with this long administrative headache for a very long time just to get access to everything you have. Now, that may not sound like such a big deal to you, but I want you to consider the fact that there's, I believe, 3.3 million people. I think that's the right number. Correct me if I'm wrong, but there's lots of people in San Diego County, let's say. And how many probate judges do you think there are for the entire county? 20, 30, 50? You'd be wrong if any of those were your guess. There's actually 3. There's 3 judges for the entire county. And not only are they handling the probate matters when somebody dies and they have to administer a will, they're also handling all kinds of other matters, like matters involving guardianship of children and matters involving conservatorships and trust litigation. So they're pretty busy. So you can imagine how long it's going to actually take on a practical matter for your family to get through the probate process if something happens to you, for your children to get through this process. And there's a quote that I have on my graphic that I use sometimes to describe probate. And it's that probate is a lawsuit you file against yourself with your own money for the benefit of your creditors. And that's really what it is. It's not for your benefit. It's not for your family's benefit. It essentially is to protect your creditors. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is using a living trust as the foundation of your legal fortress plan. And a lot of people have all kinds of ideas about what a trust is, and there are many types of trusts out there. But the trust we're talking about today is a revocable living trust, revocable because it's changeable at any time, and living because it comes into effect during your life. So it's a living, breathing, active document, not really breathing, but it changes, it grows with your life. and it comes into effect while you're alive. So it's not just something that a judge says is valid. It's something that you say is valid during your life. And it's a private document, most importantly. And it's basically, essentially, an agreement between you and yourself to hold title to everything you have, like your house, your assets, your business, your bank accounts, for during your life, your benefit, but upon your death, for the benefit of whoever you choose, your beneficiaries, which is probably your children or your family members. Now, one of the most important things about using a living trust is that it keeps this entire process of transitioning everything you have and protecting everyone you love outside of court. It's going to happen privately in your lawyer's office when something happens to you. And so you're really saving, essentially, the people you love from a long, drawn-out, expensive court process by doing a little pre-planning ahead of time and setting up this document called a trust to be the playbook for what's going to happen if something happens to you, and so that a judge doesn't have to decide that, so that a judge doesn't have to get involved. What else about a living trust? Let's see. So let's talk about when you would want to have a living trust, because it is not necessary for every single person, but there are really three main reasons that you may want to consider adding a living trust as part of your complete family fortress plan. So one is if you have minor children. If you have minor children, there's pretty much nothing that is going to keep them out of the probate court if something happens to you and you have not set up a living trust. So if you don't want your children to be subjected to that court process, then you need to have a living trust. And this is true even if you don't have any assets, because what you are going to have, and if you don't have it, the Fairy Godlawyer is going to tell you to get it, and that is life insurance. That is going to provide the assets to fund this trust to take care of your children if something happens to you. So the life insurance provides the funds, and the trust provides the fortress around those funds to protect your children and care for them. If you have real estate in the state of California and you don't want it going through a 12 to 18 month drawn out expensive court process just to get to the people that you love, then you're going to want to have a living trust to hold title to that real estate. And if you have a business and you don't want that business to just implode if something happens to you, you want there to be an orderly and streamlined process to either it being wound down or perhaps sold, or somebody else would take over as manager, then you want your trust to own that business so that can happen outside of the court system. Or if you have assets, more than just what you can see and touch, your personal property, if you have assets essentially in the state of California over $160,000 or so, then you're going to want to consider having a living trust, because otherwise you are not going to avoid those assets ending up in the probate court if something happens to you. Now, if none of those situations apply to you, then you may just only need a will, and that's fine. And I would still recommend getting a will. That's something that you can do yourself or a lawyer can help you with. We can certainly help you with that. And believe it or not, in the state of California, you can even do what's called a holographic will, which is a handwritten will. And it does have to meet some requirements, but it will be seen as valid. But if you have anything more than what you can see and touch, if you have a business, if you have minor children, or if you have real estate, then we should talk about the possibility of adding a living trust to your complete family fortress plan. So that's it, guys. That's basically the gist between a will and a trust. And I am certainly happy to answer any questions. But one thing I do want to say is that a trust is not just for the very wealthy. It's for anybody who loves their family. It's for anybody who loves their children. It's for anybody who believes in the value of having a plan ahead of time instead of sort of just, we'll see what happens. So that's it, guys. I hope that you found that helpful. Send me a message. Send me your questions for future Fairy Godlawyer updates. I'd love to hear from you of what I can actually talk about that's going to be helpful for you. So I'm going to go inside and finish my wine and get ready for this holiday weekend. And I hope you could hear me this time. So have a beautiful weekend, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye for now.